Hello, everyone, and welcome to Burnout, the weekly drag racing show. I'm your host, Wes Buck, and I'm so excited to have you along for the ride with us. Before we dive into the first ever episode of Burnout, we want to spend a little bit of time bringing you up to speed on what this show's all about. First and foremost, and above all else, our goal is to grow and build the sport of drag racing. We feel we can do that by examining topics and subjects that we know are near and dear the hearts of racers. We can do that by telling their stories, telling the relatable, inspiring stories of the men and women that make this sport great. And we can provide insight, opinion, and perspective, interviews that you won't find anywhere else. But I'm not alone in my quest to grow and build the sport of drag racing. I'm joined this week and every week by my longtime friend and 22-year drag racing journalism veteran, Mike Galimi. Mike's the reigning, defending editorial director at Fastest Street Car Magazine, the official publication of the NMCA.
Hey, Wes. Looking forward to joining the team and being part of something really fun.
We are too, brother. To add to our street cred, we went out and found the roughest, toughest young lady in drag racing, Alex Taylor. I kid. Alex is actually one of the most polite, well-rounded, and well-spoken young people our sport has to offer. She's a regular on Hot Rod Drag Week behind the wheel of her family's twin-turbocharged 8-second '68 Chevy Camaro and was inducted into Drag Illustrated Magazine's 30 Under 30 in 2017 as one of drag racing's true rising stars. How are you, Alex?
Hey Wes, I'm good. I'm super excited to be here and I look forward to it.
So, pull those seatbelts tight. We're coming out of the water wide open throttle with this one. In many ways, the last few weeks have been hard to fathom for everyone. The global coronavirus pandemic has likely impacted every single one of us in some way, shape, or form, and the sport of drag racing, unfortunately, has not been left unscathed. After being forced to indefinitely postpone the NHRA Gator Nationals, NHRA officials announced last week that they would be temporarily suspending all racing operations until early June. That's June 5th, 6th, and 7th to be exact, a full 2 months from now. While still a tentative plan, NHRA anticipates returning to action back in Gainesville, Florida, and then embarking on a fast-paced, massively revamped schedule that includes the indefinite postponement of 5 races in Charlotte, Las Vegas, Richmond, Atlanta, and Epping. The effects of this situation have rippled throughout the drag racing community. Inside sources report to us already layoffs, pay cuts, and everything in between at some of drag racing's biggest operations. However, a nation packed full of racers that are basically trapped in their houses has many of our friends in the manufacturing world reporting sales spikes, which we love to hear. Unfortunately, PDRA, NMCA, Donald Long's Sweet 16, Keith Berry's Woodstock, and a host of other major drag racing events have also been forced to reschedule. I don't know about you guys, but I am going through some serious racetrack withdrawal, and I need to get there as soon as possible. This is starting to get painful. So here's hoping sooner rather than later we're actually there. However, while races have been postponed, there have been a slew of drag racers from every level honing their skills online. I found this very interesting. Drivers like Ron Capps, Sean Langdon, and a host of others are already diving headfirst into online iRacing competitions, which actually sounds awesome. Racers like Alex Laughlin, Erica Enders, Jed Coughlin, a whole bunch of heavy-hitting bracket racers have already started a bunch of online practice tree competitions, and it's been kind of cool to see how everybody uses different tools, the different tools that are available to them to stoke their competitive fire and stay sharp while our racing season's in suspension. While events have been postponed, rescheduled, or canceled altogether, drag strips across the country are working to stay busy by way of private test session. Amongst the most noted in recent days came when Mark Carlyle of Carlyle Racing took his brand new C8 Corvette straight to Marion County International Raceway in Ohio and cracked off a 10-second lap. This was incredible. I did leave out that he stopped at his shop to install a set of drag radials, a nitrous kit, and spent a little time on the dyno, but we'll dive into that a little bit later when we have Mark on the show. I don't know about you, but I'm excited to talk a little more drag racing, so let's dive into this week's 3 big things. One of the cool things we're going to do every week on Burnout is dive into the 3 big things, 3 topics that we want to take a shot at, have a little something to say about, or just think would be fun to discuss. This week, of course, the elephant in everybody's room is the coronavirus pandemic, what it's done to the sport of drag racing, and we have to ask the question, when will we return to racing? Secondly, a really fun thing that's happening in the NHRA and the professional drag racing world is this movement to, quote unquote, drive that bitch back. We want to talk about that and see if we can't get this deal to have a little more traction attraction. Lastly, especially going back to the coronavirus situation and how everybody's kind of cooped up at home, we want to talk about whether or not a drag racing video game could work. So to get started, Mike, when do you think we're headed back to the drag strip? Do you think that June 5th, 6th, 7th for the NHRA? Is that
I think
realistic?
On a pro level, I think that's a really safe bet. Just looking at a lot of CDC and FEMA, predictions. And I mean, it's obviously a quickly changing situation right now, but I feel pretty confident about that. I know with us, with NMRA and NMCA, we're going to go a week earlier. Just looking at with Illinois, some of their restrictions and stuff, and 8 weeks was the call last week. So we'll be there in late May, the 28th to 31st. And I think those are two really good, solid starting points. I think you have to put it.
Do you think is the sport going to look different in June? Like, whenever it returns. I mean, that's some of the stuff that I'm hearing. I don't know about you guys, but the phone calls that I get from racers, manufacturers, crew chief, and everything in between is that drag racing may well look a little different come the
It's a business at the end of the day, and I think any business through a recession, even one caused by a pandemic, is going to change it. It's going to be different. Companies will adapt and overcome, and they will be definitely different. I think there's going to be a different approach to how to do things, and it's not necessarily always bad, but it will change.
Alex, you've got to be, as a racer, I know you texted me earlier today and said that you had this like huge schedule planned for 2020. Like, are you going through withdrawals, or how hard is this for you?
For me, like, I'm trying to like keep in mind the big picture that it's a big deal. So racing is just getting pushed back a little bit. But like for what we're doing, starting in June is Midwest Drags, and then into June is Rocky Mountain Race Week. So there's so much shift in the schedule, I think, that's going to happen with like how people are going to have to move races on those kind of races. Is if even one track doesn't want to be open at that time, or one track cancels, it totally shifts how that event plays out. So, and I'm sure that is the case with
it's that ripple effect,
right? And so like
it's that ripple effect, right?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see like how the schedules get shifted and whose race takes precedence over the other person's race. So I think that'll be interesting.
I think we're going to see a little bit, personally, like from the calls that we're getting and stuff, I think we're going to see people like racing to be the first one back.
Right.
Like, who can be the first one back doing burnouts and be talked about. And I mean, I know that I'm finding a little solace in the fact that our event, the Drag Illustrated World Doorslammer Nationals, was kind of one of the last major races. Not the only one, Mike. I know they had a big NMCA race down there in Bradenton the same weekend, but I don't know about you guys, but we're kind of like playing off that, continuing to talk about it, because God only knows when we'll be back to
racing. I think it's going to be determined a lot by local situations. What's happening here in New York right now is completely different than where you guys are, and I think it's going to matter just geographically which parts of the country get unlocked first, and that's going to determine who gets to be the first back on track. I know there's a lot of tracks getting inventive with track rentals, so it's not all silent. As companies and tracks adapt, they're finding interesting ways to keep putting people down the drag strip.
Do you think that when we get back to racing and we're putting winners in winner circles, how hard is it going to be to get this drive that bitch back movement to get a little bit of traction? To kind of, for those that maybe don't know or haven't seen this, it was a few years ago. I'm not sure exactly how far back this goes, but Erica Enders, NHRA Pro Stock, 3-time NHRA Pro Stock world champion, found herself in the winner circle, as she so often does. And rather than hitch up to the golf cart and tow that hot rod back to the pits, she decided to fire up that 500-inch naturally aspirated engine in her Elite Motorsports Camaro and drive it back to the pits. It was a really cool, celebrated moment. Her sister, Courtney Enders, was riding along, filming the whole thing. I think they were actually live on Facebook. It was a super cool moment that she kind of turned into a little bit of her trademark victory dance, right? She drives that thing back. At our race a couple of weeks ago in Orlando, we had a really special moment where Jed Coughlin kind of followed in her footsteps for once. She's been following in his as a championship racer for a long time. He decided to fire that thing up after pocketing $75,000 at the Doorslammer Nats and drive it back to the pits. Then we had Alex Laughlin kind of one up the world by doing the exact same thing in his supercharged Pro Mod. I mean, this is not something, they don't start these things up really for any reason, really, other than to race them. And so when they fired that thing up and drove it back to the pits, it was pretty crazy. What do you think? Do you guys think that this is something that we can you guys buy into this? Are you on board?
I love it. I think it is absolutely awesome because like being, I love the idea of a street car because I think it's so relatable for other people watching. So I think to bring that to a pro level like NHRA and have, or, big races and show the people that are in the stands and watching, these cars are driving back. I think it just creates relatability.
Yeah, I think Tom Bailey's probably laughing like, "Oh, that's cute. You drove back from the winner's circle." But the cars have become so scienced out and kind of exact and very. I mean, it's always been serious, but even more so in terms of just durability of parts and conserving all that stuff. I think it's fun to see, get in, have some fun, especially with her sister, and cruise through the pits.
Dude, it's cool. It's like get your money's worth, right? Alex, I'm going to make you guarantee. Will you promise next time you win a race that I expect it. I expect you to drive that bitch.
I drive it on the street. I drive it everywhere. But something funny, something funny that I had somebody tell me was that drag racers are the only people that spend more money to spend less time in their car. And I was like, that hurts when you say it like that,
It's true. And this is getting your money's worth.
Right.
Like what this is getting your money's worth. If you're going to buy a $250,000 or $350,000 Pro Mod, I mean, why not peruse the pits? Why not cruise back, man? And for me, I think it's just the moment it creates. Like if I'm high up at any of these series sanctions, it creates a moment that is just electric. I mean, you want to talk about leaving a lasting impact on a fan or creating a memorable experience for racers and crews and sponsors. I mean, some of the feedback that we got in Orlando, the most of it was from sponsors going, that was so awesome that they fired up the cars and drove. I've never seen that happen anywhere. And that to me was worth doing it or worth encouraging it. So again, I hope, it's my sincere prayer. I'm asking up above, please. It should be mandatory, Mike. I'd ask that you figure out how to try, if at all possible, to figure out how you could mandate this within the NMCA. One place, Mike, you made mention of the hard parts and how scienced out these race cars are, and that driving them all over creation isn't necessarily a smart move. One place where you don't have to worry about wear and tear, and it brings up our third topic today. Can a drag racing video game work? I mean, you can run your car on a drag racing video game as much as you want, drive it wherever you want, right? And not have to worry about tearing it up. I'm curious, especially in this time we're living in this moment where everyone's cooped up, no one can go to the racetrack. I'm asking the question personally, like, why isn't there a mainstream drag racing video game? And the question really becomes, would it work? Would it do well? What's your take on that? Would a drag racing game work?
It's worked before. Nitto had a 1320 video game. And they had over 1 million users on it. And this is going back maybe 10 years ago. This is before apps, before smartphones were the thing to get. But it was an online game, very successful, great for their brand. And they used drag racing as a catalyst to put themselves in front of a lot of young, car enthusiasts or people who are somewhat interested in cars using drag racing.
I'm curious, Alex, like as someone who races a lot, like is there any chance that a drag racing video game could replicate that experience? Any chance?
I think there's room for the game, but for me personally, I feel like drag racing is so like it's a personal time when you make a pass, it's only a couple of seconds long and it's not as involved. So some people have the misconception that drag racing is easy. You push the pedal, go straight, whatever. Misconception. So I think like the way it'd be hard to figure out how to present it to people. So that way you can entice people and help people that don't have a full understanding of drag racing, like so they can be.
I think that's the tool. I see it as a tool. I see the drag racing video game thing as a tool, where it's a tool our sport could use to engage young people without the big barrier to entry. They don't got to buy a truck and trailer. They don't got to buy a dually. They don't have to buy a car, right? They can spend nothing. They can buy a car on one of these video games. The one that I play all the time, there's a couple of them. Doorslammer's Drag Racing 2 on iPhone and Android, and Zach Smith's Pro Series Drag Racing. Both those are like really cool games. And I think I hear these guys talk about how they have millions of downloads. Like, to me, like my heart swells with pride and like I want to tear up. I've got goosebumps, as I say quite frequently, thinking about 1 million people playing a drag racing video game. That feels like winning the freaking lottery to me. And I think if we could find a way to enhance that experience or to deepen that engagement, and I'm calling it right here. Someone needs to answer my cry, for the love of God, get me a race pack on one of these apps. Get me some data to go over. I want some wheel speed numbers. I want to look at some shocks. I want to see what my little toy race car is doing. And you take this, people right now, you talk to racers and crew chiefs around the country, they're all staring at data. They're all looking at race pack data, going over run logs. Right now, we could, I don't know, probably give a whole lot of people something to do if your race car had a data log. And that's it for the 3 big things. Every week, we'll dive into 3 big topics, pressing matters in the sport of drag racing, and let you know at least what we think about. This next segment of the show is going to be especially fun. All of us racers are really concerned about our reaction times, right? So we decided to develop a segment of the show that is exactly that, reaction time. We're going to throw a photo, a video, any number of pieces of content in front of myself and our co-host every week and just get our natural reactions to it. This week, I've thrown a photo in front of these 2 that I think maybe we'll get a reaction out of them. I'm not totally sure. That stone-faced Mike Galimi is a little bit hard to get a rise out of, but I'm going to try here. So we're diving into this right now, clicking the link and checking this thing out. I hope you guys enjoy, or at least get a little bit of are taken back a little bit by this photo from the Drag Illustrated archives. This is from an issue I think we printed in 2005 down in Wichita, Kansas. I gotta ask, Alex, you're our wheel woman extraordinaire. Would you climb on one of these Top Fuel Harleys, especially after seeing something like that?
I mean, I hate to say never, but no, look at that. I mean, like, that's happening at the starting line before we're even making a pass. So, like, that, what can happen down further track, a couple 100 miles an hour? No.
Mike, how about you? Would you diving into one of these? You climbing on the back of one of these things or not?
Definitely not. No questions asked. Those guys are out of control, crazy.
Wait, do you ever think about this type of thing happening, Mike, when you're down around the starting line or in the staging lanes taking photos? Like, these guys wear like ballistic vests, not photo vests, ballistic vests. So what do you feel a little bit? I mean, have you ever caught yourself in like an awkward moment where you're like, oh, this seems like it's sketchy, I'm going to take 10 steps back?
Several times. Yeah, you're only 10 feet from the cars, whether they're nitro cars or nitro Harleys, pro mods. Anything can happen, even in a street car. And, stuff gets slung off cars all the time. And, as a photographer, that risk is definitely there. But going in. So it's always, head on a swivel and be ready for anything.
Alex, do you think about that? Like when you're in the staging lanes, getting ready to make a pass and you're walking around all these cars, sometimes they're struggling to start or backfiring. Do you ever catch yourself like taking a couple steps back because you know what could happen?
Yeah. And I think like sometimes we become too comfortable, because you don't see something happen for a little while, but I think it's something definitely to keep in mind. And I know for me too, when I'm sitting in my car, about to make a pass, I think about like, because I do all my own work. So I think about like, what if this happens? What's this happen? What can happen here? So like, being at the starting line too, the same thing is going through my head. So yeah, for sure.
Well, this to me looks like a classic, did I tighten that fitting moment, right? Where somebody is probably going to have to answer for this after the fact, man. Because the response to this photo after we printed it was like monumental. People around the world were calling and asking questions and inquiring, is that guy okay? Fortunately, he was okay. We wouldn't have run the photo, of course, if it wasn't. But it's a big reminder of how crazy the action isn't just on the drag strip, man. It's all over the place. So our first ever guest on Burnout. Very exciting. The one and only Mark Carlyle Racing out of Ohio. Very well-known small tire racer and kind of has an affinity for small tire, late model, high performance cars. He's at one point in time, and I'm not sure he can probably update this like most racers can with all their resume on the back of their t-shirt. He was responsible for the quickest and fastest independent rear suspension Corvette on the planet for many moons, and of course made headlines again here in the last couple of weeks, going out buying a brand new Chevy Corvette, a C8 mid-engine Corvette, and taking it straight to the drag strip. I do think he stopped off at his shop there in Ohio, slapped on a set of his patented weld wheels and Mickey Thompson drag radials, put a nitrous outlet dry kit on it, headed to the racetrack and set world records. Mark, thanks for joining us here today. And I gotta just start this deal off with this going fast in near stock Corvettes. This is nothing unusual for you, eh?
No, I mean, hey, listen, if it's fast, I'm going to try and make it faster. That's just what we do.
You've become known for being the guy that'll go out and take these late model brand new platforms and start modifying them immediately and going really fast with them. Was this like a strategic move for Carlyle Racing to get your hands early on a C8 Corvette, get it to a racetrack and start making waves?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the C8, me and the guys all talked about it, and we knew, hey, if you're not first, you're last, right? I mean, that's from my buddy Ricky Bobby. So, I mean, we gotta get out there to the track, get out there quick, and make something happen so that nobody forgets that we're still kind of fun. I went to the dealer that usually sells me stuff, and he wasn't gonna be able to get me one quickly, so I posted up online and said, who will give me an early allocation? And a local dealership calls up and says, you can have our earliest one. We said, as soon as we get it, we had wheels waiting for us. We had a nitrous kit waiting for it. I literally drove it straight from the dealership to the shop and put it up on the dyno.
That's
the
awesome.
internet, all the haters were going, you're going to blow it up. You can't, it can't do this. You can't do that. I'm like, yeah, if it blows up, we'll build another one. But
it's awesome, man. So you took it straight to the dyno. What kind of power? I mean, can you give us a little bit for those that don't know? Like, what are the ins and outs of this new C8 combination? And obviously it was a shot heard round the world, right? That they changed formats to a mid-engine program. Can you tell us a little bit more about the drivetrain and the power levels of a stock C8 Corvette?
Sure. I mean, it's an LT2 motor, which is basically an LT1 with some minor changes. And they're claiming 500 crank or flywheel horsepower, and then it's got a DCT transmission, which is basically like an automatic stick shift. It shifts for you. They say 500 horsepower, which that's at the flywheel. Once you put it on the dyno, obviously you have some drivetrain loss, but we were actually pretty impressed. I mean, it made 440 real wheel horsepower in fifth gear. With 24 miles on it. We've since redynoed it in fourth gear on a different dyno, and it made 447 after the break-in. And then we took it out to the track, and actually, there's a quick little funny story about that. We wanted to go to the track on the first day. Everything was good. It was beautiful out. It was sunny. Everything's good. We go to load the car up. It starts snowing, and so there was an inch and a half of snow on the ground, and we're like, you know what? We still got to do something. So we took it out and we practiced with the launch control on the side street out by the shop. And we were doing 60-foot launches in the snow, and the damn thing hooked. I mean, it was hooking up.
Mike, you're tied into all that GM and late model high performance. You're close with all those guys in Detroit. Does it surprise you at all? Because that shocks me that there's like launch control, traction control of that level on a brand new.
No, I think in the last probably 5 to 10 years, we've seen the OEs kind of incorporate a lot of new technology that us as enthusiasts really enjoy, and they've done a great job with it. And the Corvette obviously is carrying on that tradition really well. It sounds like with the traction control too. So.
Clearly. I know your power adder of choice, Alex, is twin turbochargers on that Camaro of yours. But Mark, you put a nitrous system on this thing. So I take it this is like a relatively generic dry kit from Nitrous Outlet?
Well, generic is the understatement of the century. I mean, we had it. All right. So when we put it on, we're like, all right, we're known for doing some really classy work here and making everything look really nice and stuff. But I told the guys, I was like, I don't care. Let's just get it on the car and let's roll. We literally had a power wire from the front of the car taped to the bottom of the car with duct tape across the bottom. And we had the solenoids zip tied on. I mean, it was just the quickest job we could do just because we had to be first to the track. And now the car is currently apart, having a twin turbo system set up on it. So
you're already diving into the twin turbo. That's got to get you fired up, eh, Alex?
I love it. I think it's cool to see something so new dive straight into it. Mark, I want to know though, what's next? What are your limits on that you're seeing being at? It's a brand new car. What is the main things that you're running into right now? Because obviously it's go faster. That's everybody. We got to go faster.
Well, obviously the tuning is the biggest holdback right now. So we're trying to figure out if we're going to tune it with, just methanol to, just to compensate, or if we're going to do a standalone port injection system and just tune that way. So, I mean, that's the biggest problem right now because it's not an open ECU like, all the other cars
Right.
are. Our biggest holdback on big power is going to be that. I mean, the LT motors are really only sustaining about 600 to 700 horsepower, before you start doing pistons and stuff anyway. So, we do have some limitations that we're dealing with in that scenario.
The car ended up running 1065. Is that correct, Mark?
Yeah, on a 50 dry shop, we went 1065.
That seems really impressive for a basically bone stock car with a few $100 nitro system going 1060s. You clearly have a hell of a platform there, Mark. I can't wait to see how far you take this.
Oh yeah, well, we pushed the pedal real hard too, so that made it go fast. But what I thought was the other difference was we did it on 2 different days, and we went from a negative 1,000 DA day to a positive 300 DA day, and still ran 1105. I mean, all these different changes happen. I bet you we have 15 1105 passes, and I mean, that's great for bracket racing, right? But we don't care about bracket racing. I'm a heads up racer. I just want to go fast.
I was going to say, I bet there's somebody looking to buy one of these things and take it to the guaranteed million. Something like that. 1105 every rip, man. Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us, and we're excited to follow along on this whole journey. It's going to be fun to watch, and I think you're probably going to sell all sorts of stuff as you establish yourself as a leader in the C8 race. So thanks again, Mark, for spending some time with us this afternoon.
Yeah, no problem. It's my pleasure.
So for our second guest, we want to dive into a topic that we feel is pretty significant right now, and that is the influx of hub dynos to chassis shops and hot rod shops, dyno shops around the globe. It used to be something that you would see every once in a while on like a viral video on YouTube. Now it has become commonplace. The guy who drove that bus, one of the originators of this concept and bringing this tool to the mainstream, was Joe Oplawski, the one and only Hyperaktive Motorsports own Joe Oplawski. He joins us today. Joe, how are you, man?
I'm pretty good. How are you guys?
Just trying to stay safe and clean. Have you washed your hands today?
I have, absolutely. It's a bit crazy out there these days.
It's very crazy, man. I'm staying 6 feet away from my computer screen right now. Right?
That's probably a good idea.
Literally. I don't know where Mike's been. I can't
trust him.
The city slicker.
He is in New York, so you never know.
The whole place is shut down, man. Well, so I'll start this off because I'm sure you've seen it too. And I don't know if this is something that these folks are stealing your shine, bro. Like they're stealing your shine a little bit. I'm just playing. But you really were, Joe, one of the innovators, the originators of this hub dyno movement. Like I said, it seems like everyone has one now. I'm just curious. I mean, to start off, what spurred your interest in the platform before we get to your reaction or how you feel about the state of affairs today? Like, what got you fired up on bringing one of these things to your
A few years ago, I think it's been just over 3. So it was about 4 years ago when I started doing the research. I was talking to Ben. He actually, had a unit. I flew out to Arizona, kind of watched what went down, watched it all, and it was pretty badass. So at that point in time, I started saving my pennies and kind of figuring out what we needed to do to get one. And it's been good ever since, honestly.
Well, and isn't that kind of like some of the thought process when you say saving your pennies? Like, I remember there was a video, I think Tim McCamus did it on Facebook or YouTube, where it just talked about the cost saving measures, that are associated with testing on one of these hub dynos. I mean, you don't get rained out at Joe's shop. You don't, you're not renting a track. You're not spraying glue.
You have the ability to remove variables. You can remove the tire glue. You can remove the weather. You can remove the sunshine, the racetrack prep, everything to get to the core of what you're trying to complete.
In terms of tuning, you say about testing parts and stuff like that. I know on the older wheel, like a dyno jet, like a wheel dyno, the tune would change from a dyno to the real world. How does that work in terms of the hub dynos? Can you load it the right way? How do you even determine how to load it for each application?
When I started doing my research and talking to people that owned chassis dynos, they would make the comment that you can change the power output essentially by the way the car is strapped to the dyno. So you could literally make a pull, I don't care, make 800 horsepower, unstrap it, move it half an inch and restrap it, and that might change by 30 to 80 horsepower. So,
is that serious?
Oh yeah. So as I started doing the research, more and more, there's not one person that told me that didn't occur. Like, well, why would I ever want to chase a number on those types of systems? The reason I liked the hub dyno was the ability to have consistent results.
I know when I was up there with you a couple years ago, I sat with my mouth open the whole time you were talking in shock of like everything you were revealing to me that was available with these different platforms to tune. And one thing we kind of talked about was like how technology is progressing and like the capabilities are changing. So with this dyno in combination with the technology we have now, do you see it as something necessary that shops are going to start needing as people's power desires continue to grow?
I think it's a situation where, 4 years ago, if you'd have told me I would own a dyno, I'd have laughed at you. Today, it's a tool we use all the time. Probably not as much as we should because I'm at a racetrack all the time, but it helps because as we use technology more on the drag racing side, where the ECUs are more capable of different strategies, we'll say, allowing the dyno to show you how that changes and the effects that it has are pretty dramatic. So yeah, I mean, is it a necessity? Depends on how fast you want to go and how much information you want to have.
Joe, one of the things I noticed early on when you guys first started doing the videos was you were one of the few people who started wearing safety equipment on dyno testing. On the street side of things, completely foreign to a lot of the shops.
Through conversations with friends and things like that, like the only, why do you wear safety gear? You have a fire suit because of fire, not because of hitting a wall. There's extinguishers nearby, there's hoses nearby, I want people to wear their fire suit as well as their helmet, because then the biggest reason for a helmet is in case of a fire, it protects the head, but also, a transmission failure, a drive shaft failure can still occur sitting still. We try to keep people away, a safe distance from, while it's operating. Typically I'm the closest one and obviously the stupidest one. So,
well, maybe you started social distancing. You started it right there in your hot rod shop.
I've been practicing social distancing for 30 years now, so this is nothing new to me.
Right. Well, hey, man, we appreciate you being willing to get a little close with us here this afternoon and share your insight. I really was excited to have you on here, Joe, and we appreciate the time and the information. I think you're an innovator, not at all surprising, and I hope you're staying safe out there. And like I said, washing your hands, keeping your distance, six or so feet apart, whatever it takes to get this deal over with so we can go drag racing.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, guys.
Our next guest doesn't really need an introduction. The one, the only reigning NHRA Pro Mod drag racing champion, Stevie Fast Jackson. And I can't tell if are we going to do an interview or are we going like shooting?
Whatever you want to do, baby. We're from the South. We're ready for anything. Interviews, social media. There's no racing to do, so we're like pressure washing stuff and chopping down trees and things like that. So we,
you guys, you're a full-time operation. So what are you doing to I'm sure, you guys are well known for keeping your stuff well maintained and ready to go. Does this have you guys tearing everything apart and redoing it or what?
I will have our race operation so screwed up by the time it's time to go drag racing that we'll be lucky if it will start. Because the worst thing that you can do is give me some time to think about what to do to make it better. So we had all our engines lined up and ready to go by the door. Since then, we've taken them all in the engine room. The problem is when you start changing components without taking it to the track. So you'll be you'll put a camshaft in it, and you'll think about it for about 3 days, and you'll change it. Well, it may run good, may not. I don't know. So I'll have it screwed up. We're over maintaining everything. There's projects that you can make all the time to do. We're doing a bunch of dumb stuff that we would never do, but I'm keeping my guys on. I'm keeping them paying their full rip, and I told them as long as we can find something to do, we're going to race until I'm broke. So we're busy.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, man, because that's been something that I think's weighing on the mind of everybody. Hey, how do we keep these shops busy? How do we keep guys working? I'm curious. I know you had an unfortunate situation down at our deal here a couple of weeks ago. Your World Championship winning Pro Mod Camaro got into the wall, tore it up pretty good down there. I was glad to see you were okay, but I know there was a bunch of shuffling getting ready to go on, and you made headlines that you were going to bring the nitrous car that Jeffrey Barker had been driving out to the Gator Nationals. Now that you've got some time to kind of collect yourself, what does the game plan look like moving forward?
So, as always, it's a big thrash to get stuff done when something terrible happens. Your race was an awesome event. I hope you're proud of yourself for that. It was a good deal. Everybody that came and attended it had a good time. The racers all had a good time. Ozzy and Maria did a good job.
Awesome people.
It was. I thought it was an awesome event. I wanted to win that deal. Race. OSW and Orlando Speed World are sponsors of mine. Getting into the wall and piling that thing up in the first round, basically of the first round of the season, that's a ominous cloud. We came out swinging, man. I really over-prepared in the off season, and we're ready to rip. We came out and we're struggling. We're running fast. We got new stuff, but getting the car basically stripped and sent off, and then getting the Barker Max Moby Dick Nitrous World Future Total Overall World Record holding gorilla that nobody will ever get close to a tenth of what it'll run, getting it ready in 3 days, getting a seat poured, seat belts. Jeffrey's a big guy. I can't reach the pedals. I mean, just all cert chassis certifications and tech cards, and it's in Georgia and I'm in Florida. It was a massive 3 days to get it there. We finally get it to Gainesville. I sit in the thing. I'm like, I haven't drove a nitrous car in a long time. So I'm like remembering all this stuff because I wired it. I did all the work to it over the winter. So I'm familiar with the car, but not familiar with the process. So I'm figuring it out. We get it all like we're ready to start it, and they call a race. So that was like a terrible moment for me because I had done made my mind up. I was taking that thing to Gainesville to smash the quarter-mile world record by a 10th. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to be the one to smash it instead of Jeffrey. Jeffrey's all down in the dumps. I'm feeling terrible about ripping his ride away from him. He's done a bunch of work to get to do it. It all kind of works out now. I'll get my car fixed. It's actually in the paint shop, getting some paint on it, getting her party dress back on. I tore her party dress, got her all skin up. But she's getting some new paint on her. The nitrous car will be back and be ready to rip when we go back to Gainesville. So it's treacherous and tragedy and mayhem. It made a good movie.
But it makes a great story, right?
If we bounce back from this, I need like one of them Oscars or something they give the movie star people. It's crazy.
So the nitrous car, I think that's like a big off-season story. You know, it's 566. You guys went in testing with it. You claimed it was old. What you guys got some time to
old, busted, and can't be trusted.
You guys got any plans to upgrade it before the reason?
They don't need to be upgraded. They'll all run 550 just like they said. You can take a 632 and take it NHRA and put Holly EFI on it and qualify for the field. You just got to run it like normal people run one. Can't turn the fifth kit on at 3.5 seconds. But we're not going to upgrade it. I told him, put it on jack stands. I moved the 4-link back where it needed to be for him with his body weight before I left Gainesville. I'm not going to start it until we roll into Q1. It's ready to go. It can't go slow enough to not run good. So I see that we got some nitrous weight rules. Let me go ahead and just dive on in. You feel like diving? You dive on in. Throw the microphone off. Start getting fired up. I see that we got some nitrous weight rule adjustments before the first race. Now, I don't know what's going on with the NHRA technical department.
They're on sick leave or corona leave.
But y'all are laughing because you know what I'm about to say. They may have missed the fact that there weren't a lot of PDRA cars that didn't come convert to add the 125 pounds and spend the $25,000 on the safety modifications. They think 25 pounds is going to get that. But they must have missed the fact that if we're going to make preseason rule changes, how about my man Michael Bealey, whose turbo car is ripping down the racetrack and it's 1,300s behind the field? He didn't get a pound of boost. I hate turbos more than I hate anything. And them guys need some help. How are you going to show up to one race and you expect to run at the top of the field? I'm not knocking the Pro Charger combination. Justin Bond's a teammate of mine. He's got a bad hot rod. I love seeing them things run, but not in bass fishing, golf, baseball. If I showed up at the Super Bowl, they wouldn't even let me play. And they show up and slap us around, but we're going to give the nitrous cars 25 pounds. I don't know. It makes for a good
It's
story.
weird, man.
It's going to be a fun season.
I thought whenever Justin Bond went 562 down there in Orlando, I thought, oh my God, they're gonna crucify me before this deal's over because they're gonna be changing rules. I thought they'd hang weight on that, do something.
Well, they should have used that as a barometer. If you're gonna fly NHRA Tech there and have NHRA Tech at the event, use that performance from that event as a barometer to get some parity. Don't wait till race 5. But
I actually thought that was the only reason they agreed to do it, because I want to give the NHRA a brief shout out, because I didn't think that they would agree to do it now. We had to pay them. We had to pay them to come. They didn't do it for free, but I thought
pay
the
them
only
to bring
reason
their eyeballs, or they just brought their notepad?
I think they brought their notepad, man. I mean, I was so proud of the way they did the tech at our race, but I can't believe that we're not learning from that. Right?
I don't care what they do. Everybody's like, oh my God, the brake tighter. As fast as that thing is in good air, it's going to slow down in bad air, and it'll be fine. One thing, man, I hate to agree with Ricky Smith, but one thing he said the other day on the social media is that anybody that's never really failed at a combination before shouldn't be able to just show up and slap the field around by 500s. That's probably pretty accurate. I feel like my program is pretty remote, but the picking up a 10th at the time's over. It's funny how the fastest that they could run last year in NHRA is like 585 at 230. And then all of a sudden you put up some money, they pick up 2.5 tenths and 20 miles an hour. That'll help you out. If I can pick up 20 miles an hour, to help me out. But no matter what they decide to do, they'll get it right. I think I see the point of the nitrous rule adjustment. Just make it 100 pounds. If you're trying to lure them guys in, I know they got some people in their ear about the big motor's not competitive and stuff. I'll show y'all. Don't worry. I got one coming too. So I hope they take 100 pounds off that big motor.
I honestly, I hope they do. I hope they do whatever is required to encourage the participation of more nitrous cars. I think you'll agree. We need them out there, dude. I mean, I'm telling you, dude, they sound good. They look good. Hood scoops and header flames, nitrous purges. We need all those things. So I really hope that they do something to spur some participation. I'd love to see some of these PDRA Pro Nitrous guys, even if they only show up for a race or two, right? I would love to see them come out and be a part of this deal.
Every time they take weight off that big motor, I call Jay Cox and dare him to step across the chalk line. We're coming to race in Charlotte. It's not far of a drive. I don't want to hear whining and bitching and complaining. 25 or whatever more pounds. They ought to give Jay like 100-pound credit, just so he don't have to do shit and he can show up and try to qualify 30.
Stevie, what we need to go from a PDRA Pro Nitrous car to a quarter mile? I mean, how much is it? Is it a lot of changeover for a nitrous guy?
The biggest thing is all the safety updates. That was the biggest problem with us having to rob the Barker Max car. Last year I can just get my Shadow ready to go in 3 days and I can take that thing out. The Shadow is a backup car. I can't afford to spend $20,000 updating the safety stuff to have it sit there. So believe me, I called around. Justin Bond offered me to let me drive his car in Gainesville, and I just couldn't do that to him. I didn't think that was a good idea, but there are no cars around. So to get back to your question, I'm not trying to steer away from it. It's a lot to do for those guys to add 15 pounds to their car when they can't already make weight at PDRA. It's really hard for them because I think they can weigh 2450 or something. It's really hard for them to get to that weight with that big engine. So then to spend $20,000 and add 15 or 20 pounds to come to one or two races is a difficult proposition.
Do you, as a super safety oriented guy, Stevie, someone I know you buy, I'm talking about you. You've always been the guy that buys everything that you can buy to be safe. How did you respond to that change? Because you're making a really great point. Like we try to change the rules to bring in all these PDRA guys, and then we put this massive barrier to entry in place. I mean, were you on board with the rule changes?
Hell no, I wasn't on board with any of them. I told them it was all crazy. But I screamed and whined and complained, bitched and yelled, and it fell on deaf ears. I think that I see the package and the vision. And a lot of those rules have been in the rule book forever. For instance, the tunnel rule, that's been in the rule book for a decade, but they just don't enforce it. I just think it's a massive amount to put in a short amount of time. Do I think all that stuff is safe? Yeah, maybe it's better. But to institute that amount of rules at one time, dude, it was a nightmare getting our stuff done. I mean, just to get it completed in time was a nightmare. And it's cobbled up, and halfway through the season, all that crap everybody's got all over their transmission is going to have duct tape holding it together, and they're going to be hammering it off. And it's just a lot. I see the thing. Of course, nobody wants to get hurt. I'm a safety guy. These cars are dangerous. When you drive these race cars, guess what? You're going to crash. Bad things are going to happen. It's not a for everyone class. There are classes for everyone. This is not – you cannot legislate these things to be 100% safe because there won't be anybody racing.
Right. You're exactly right, man. And honestly, Stevie, that's a great place to kind of to wrap things up. There's nothing. That's what makes drag racers heroes. That's why we put you on magazine covers. That's why we interview you on shows, because you guys are courageous. It's like the most understated thing in all of drag racing is the courage it takes to do it, man. Stevie, thank you for being here, being a part of this first ever episode of Burnout. We love you, man, and we look forward to seeing you on the track soon.
I'm just so excited to talk about some drag racing. Like, you can call me, like, when we're done with this, if you want to BS about racing and bench race, just call me back. I'm so tired of hearing about flus and bird flus and pandemics. I'm ready to talk about tire smoke. Please.
Do you have enough hand sanitizer there? Or
in there? Phil's trying to give me money for it every day. He's like, I give you $5 for that last bottle of hand sanitizer. I'm like, no. This joker went and bought a 55-gallon drum of alcohol, and he's put it in a spray bottle, and he's walking around spraying everybody in the shop. Like, you walk out, he's like, give me your hand. The damn FedEx guy, he's scared to death. Every time he comes up, Phil's like, where you been? You been anywhere everybody got the coronavirus? So
I put a can of brake clean
here at KTR.
I put a can of brake clean in my backpack, and I just been carrying it around. Yeah, it worked my whole childhood. Well, Stevie, thank you again for joining us, man. We appreciate it a bunch, and we'll talk to you real soon, okay?
All right. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Stevie. Thank you, guys.
Well, how about it for our very first episode of Burnout, the weekly drag racing show? I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty proud of this. I mean, we've made a lot of progress. We've learned a lot. We've had a ton of fun talking about drag racing. I think it's almost time to call it a day.
Whoa. We're not done yet. What's up, Wes? Keith Berry. We're not done with this show yet.
Oh, fancy seeing you here. He's going to force a Wostock conversation, isn't he? I know we were going to do this. I know we were planning on doing this, but we had to get through the show. We couldn't wait any longer on you, Keith.
Yeah, I'm a multi-tagger for Wostock, and then I've got Horsepower Wars coming up, but Wostock is the first.
Hey, man, you've been on the cover of Drag Illustrated a couple of times. I was waiting for you to call in. I didn't know if you were going to show up, so we had to move on.
Yeah.
I'm glad you did, though. Seriously, though, in all seriousness, I'm super glad that you did. And in between diving in and out of chicken factories, you did make an announcement last week on dragillustrated.com that you would be postponing, at the bare minimum, the fast approaching Wostock event, which we were all very excited to go to. And you made the decision to move that thing back into May, well aware that you may have to move it also into June.
You know, we're the next big thing. So we're excited about it. It may be, right now our date is May the 14th through the 16th. Our next date is June the 11th through the 13th. So we just, we're at mercy of this Corona shit and what the government says is good, and we got to do what's right. So we're in the holding pattern, but we're the next big plane to land, if you will.
But I got to tell you, man, with the addition of RVW, Pro 275, and all the normal no time classes that you have, this is going to be a barn burner. I think this could be one of the biggest races of the year. And now that we're having there will be so much pent up demand before we get there. Holy cow. It's going to be epic.
Man, we appreciate it. We're so proud that you guys will be there, that Speed Video will be there, that Drag Illustrated will be there, and what better place to have it than the legendary Darlington Dragway.
Keith, seriously, thank you so much for calling, man. It's always great to hear from you, and I honestly cannot wait to see you at the legendary Darlington Dragway for Wostock 2020, whenever that may be, hopefully sooner rather than later. But I got to tell you guys, it is time to wrap this deal up. The first ever episode of Burnout, the weekly drag racing show, is in the books. Mike, Alex, thank you guys so much for being a part of this. I can't wait to see you guys next week.
Hey, before you go, everybody give me a big woo.
Yeah, woo! Woo!
That was really disappointing, Alex. That was really, listen, I expected Mike to say no, but that was really a letdown, Alex.
All right. We can do it again. It's like, woo! Woo!
You got to do the strut.
Yeah, you got to strut it, Wes. You can strut it.
Shout out to Ric Flair, man. I hope you're healthy, staying safe. Hero of mine.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, Keith.
See you guys.
See ya.